What is going on, guys? My name is Nikias and this is my M1 MacBook Pro review from a student's perspective. So there's a bunch of reviews of the M1 MacBook Pro on YouTube that push the M1 chip to its limits. They push the MacBook Pro for the RAM and they push it the hardest to see where it can get. In this review, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do the exact same thing as I did with my M1 MacBook Air review from a student's perspective. Is this computer good enough for students? I don't really care if the 4K HDR M1 takes it to the next level. Now, I don't wanna get you bored with the M1 chip, but it's definitely important to talk about it briefly. What's the M1 chip and why is everybody hyping it so much? I don't wanna get you bored because I know chip stuff might sound boring, but trust me, it's not. So basically, Apple has always had chips in their Macs, right? But Intel always made their chips, but now, for the first year in 2020, now 2021, Apple has actually started to make their own chips called the M1 chips. And there's a bunch of benefits of this M1 chip. Basically, speed, battery, performance. All those three are incredible. Performance is unbelievable. Last year's most expensive Mac Pros and MacBook Pros, all the other computers are slower than this year's MacBook because it's got the M1 chip. And it's unbelievably useful and might be too good for students. It's 1.9 times faster. It's got way much more than you need for students. You're gonna have thousands of apps open. Battery is unbelievable. So if you're a student and you have a bunch of tabs open on Chrome or on Safari while you're screen recording your online Zoom class and that kinds of stuff, you won't have a problem at all with the M1 MacBook Pro. It's seriously unbelievable. If we're talking about design, it's got the exact same design as previous models, which means we get the exact same touch bar. Which, is it useful for students? Let me know in the comments down below if you guys think it's useful for students. But the touch bar for me, it's nice that it's there. I use it because it's there, but I wouldn't say it's like the most revolutionary feature in the world. We also get, once again, Touch ID on the MacBook Pro. I would have really liked Face ID to come on the MacBook Pro because I seriously love the M1 MacBook Pro, but the only new thing that it has, it's got the M1 chips, which is already worth it by itself, but I think it would have been really nice if it would have had Face ID. If we're talking about materials, the aluminum on the MacBook Pro is unbelievably durable, so it's great for students, and students we're always throwing our computers in our backpack and shoving it and putting outside on the library, on our desk, on our backpack. The materials that you're gonna get out of this MacBook Pro feel like they're worth your money. Typing is a must for students. Typing essays, typing documents, typing presentation, it's a must. And we need an extremely good keyboard, and the M1 MacBook Pro has an extremely good scissor mechanism keyboard. They're comfortable, they're clicky, they're everything that you would expect from a MacBook keyboard. Unlike last year's keyboard, which just sucked. So a quick difference between the M1 MacBook Air and the M1 MacBook Pro is that the M1 MacBook Pro does have a fan. So the MacBook Air does not have a fan, which means it's fanless. The MacBook Pro does have a fan, but it doesn't really turn on unless you really push this computer to its limits. I barely, it didn't really turn on by the time that I was using it. And another quick difference is the battery. On the MacBook Air, we're gonna get up to 18 hours of battery life, while on the MacBook Pro, we're gonna get 20 hours of battery life. So that's a quick difference. So, is the MacBook Pro worth it for students? Should you buy the MacBook Pro for students? And I'm gonna say, yes, of course. Obviously, it's incredible, but I don't think it's a good choice for students. The MacBook Air is the computer for students. Students don't really need the craziest power, okay? And the M1 MacBook, it doesn't matter if it's the Air or the Pro, they're both beasts, like absolute beasts. So it doesn't matter which ones you actually choose. So if you wanna save some money, get the MacBook Air because it's already incredible. The value that it has is unbelievable. It's probably the best Apple product of the year. If you've got some extra cash to spend, of course, the MacBook Pro is technically better, which it is. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but the smart decision here for you as a student would be to get the MacBook Air because it's everything that a student ever wanted. It's lighter, it's thinner, and it's got the same, practically the same power. The battery is also incredible. So get the MacBook Pro if you want. Like, I'm not gonna stop you. It's better, but that's my opinion. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more student related content, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.
My darling, I told you I'm not perfect man, but I promise I will never